Hey there, everybody. My name is Dr. Rob Collins, and I am the host of the inkED Education Podcast. Thank you so much for being here and listening to episode 3. Today, I'm incredibly excited to share my conversation with my good friend, Lindsay Johnson. Lindsay is a English teacher from Rowan County Senior High School, nestled in Eastern Kentucky, in Morehead, Kentucky. Lindsay is an incredibly creative educator, an awesome human being and community member, and she has some really deep insights about how to connect students to place and also how to give them authorship over the place where they live. It's an awesome conversation. I think there will be a lot of actionable insights for you. Just a couple quick notes about Lindsay. This is her 13th and a half year of teaching in Kentucky. She has been a Kentucky Writing Project teacher consultant. She was a leader of the Morehead Writing Project through Morehead State University. She is an alumna, of the Kentucky Innovative Teacher Fellowship. She was the Adolescent Literacy Project Facilitator, and she is also a National Board Certified Teacher. Lindsay's incredible. She's amazing. This conversation is exciting and has tons of practical insights, and I hope you enjoy. Alrighty, hello there, Lindsay Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Today was closing day, so I have been all around this classroom, packing up all the little memories and all the little parts of our year. It's a busy day, but always a very reflective day.
For sure. That was actually my first question for you. Is it your summer yet, and how's it going? But I guess not until the day's done, right?
That's right. Probably as soon as I'm done with this, it will officially feel like
Hey, well, thank you so much for being here with us on closing day. I know it is somewhat hectic, but also I'm glad to be the blowing out of the candle of the school year for you. So, yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the inkED podcast. Just some background on inkED. Our little mascot is an octopus. I think octopuses are so cool. But the notion is like spilling the ink on the untold stories of teachers that are doing amazing learner-centered work in their classrooms every day. So I just want to talk with you a little bit about what your year's been like, hear some stories about some of that amazing work that you've been doing, and hopefully we can glean some insights from those stories. I'll start looking back on 24-25, especially since this is our last moment of it. What was your highlight of teaching this year? Your one moment that when you look back, you're like, man, that was an amazing moment I want to keep with me forever.
Well, so we have some student showcases of different projects and different things that we do. And I always, at those, just feel like I just like look around the room and you see your students just interacting, with the audience and community members and the people who've shown up, and sharing their work and their thoughts and their creations and their creativity. And so this year at the Root Deep Grow Tall, one of those that we had right before Christmas break, it was really nice because our library was full of all different types of projects. So we had some people playing like live music, and then other artwork on display, and then a whole like little computer lab of different like projects that were created virtually. And so just like standing there, and all their parents were there, kind of just walking around checking out different projects. There's a whole food section, which was nice, little tasty treats, and just looking around and just being really proud and really glad that the students had that opportunity. And then I, as a teacher, you get to know them in a different way when that side of their passions and creativity comes out.
Yeah, I always notice there's a difference when you see your kids interacting with other adults that aren't you and aren't within the K-12 system. And it's so fun to see them be little people. I'm talking about your students that are, almost adults anyway. But there's something special about seeing them interact with community members that they otherwise wouldn't interact with in that sort of capacity. And of course, the projects are amazing too. I have to shout out really quickly. So I did get to attend your school's Defenses of Learning, their senior capstones. And just the way that your school and you and your colleagues have structured that Defensive Learning capstone experience for the community members is excellent. I just had to call out the way that you have the Viking ambassadors reach out, and they had pre-recorded a video saying, here's where you park, here's how you walk in the building and check in, and just the way they cared for us throughout the day, in addition to the fact that the presentations themselves were really interesting. I just had to say kudos to you for that as a participant. So
Yes, yes. So that's my colleague Craig Piercy. He is incredible. And the
yeah,
ambassadors, I mean, they're wonderful representatives of our school. That's a program that they started a couple years ago that I think really meets a need in our school of just leadership. And instead of an adult welcoming you to our school, let's let a kid do that. So
yeah, awesome. Well, anyway, kudos to him, and make sure Craig knows that I've said this, because I do mean it. It was awesome. I've been to many a senior capstone, and this was pretty wonderful at Rowan County. So, well, we've talked about kids quite a bit, and student learning. So I would like to ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a learner for a moment, and think back to the best experience as a learner that you've ever had. Whether it's in your K-12 experience or outside of it, you could have been a child, perhaps an adult. What experience was that, and what about the experience made it so impactful for you?
So I remember, hold on, let me think about what grade this was. This would have been, I think, junior year. I had the same English teacher for 2 years of high school. So it's sometimes like I get confused on what year we did what, but I'm
Right.
pretty sure this was junior year. So this would have been AP Lang with Miss Penny Alderman. And we were in groups and we got to pick, it was kind of like a lit circle moment. We got to pick a novel to read from this list of texts that she had. And my group picked Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. And we got to teach the class for a week and share like different parts of the story. And I honestly can't remember if like it's so funny because it's so fuzzy. Like, as a teacher, you think back to educational experiences you had, and you're like, I know that there was a rock solid plan, but it's
Mm,
like, all I remember was we got to read that really cool book, and then we got to teach the class for a week. And so we got to design, I mean, this was back in like 2004 or 5. So we got to design like the bulletin board, and I just, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. So like bulletin board design was like, I was like, this is the best assignment you could give me. And we went
absolutely.
like the MSU library and went into and got the old I forget what the machine's even called, where you could get like the actual newspapers, and they're like on this thing and it slides through, and we got all these
Hmm.
copies to make like the background of this bulletin board. And we like reenacted scenes of the book to bring it to life, and it's just trying to get people interested. It was like what the project we did maybe right before summer, and we were trying to entice people to like read this book over summer. Like, if you're going to read a book over summer, it should be this book, and here's why.
Mm,
And it was, if you've ever read that book, it was it was wild. I've never read anything like it at that point in my life. So then to have like that ownership of coming up with a way to, engage and excite people about it, and then getting to be a teacher when that's all I've ever wanted to be. And so handing your classroom, or, she handed her classroom over to us, and that was just such a gift. And I loved every minute of our class for a lot of reasons, but that especially was a wonderful time.
oh,
Like,
I'm
we put
sure.
blenders on our heads. Like, if you read Slaughterhouse-Five, there's like,
Yeah, yeah.
and so we went and we spray painted them with like glow in the dark spray paint, and we like turned off the lights in the classroom and put, the like, I just remember being like, this is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hearing, so in that story, first off, I'm hearing that it met a need or a passion that you had. You knew you wanted to be a teacher, right? And here you're given the opportunity. And I'm hearing that kind of autonomy to choose how to teach. Also, though, I'm hearing like a ton of trust from your teacher. Just the I'll admit I was probably a little bit more of a straight-laced teacher than I would be now. It really mattered to me that I had things structured and I knew when things were happening. Always had a plan, right? But there's a lot of trust involved in saying for a week, I'm going to give my students the opportunity to do that. Um, I think there's a lesson to be learned there for a lot of teachers that maybe do hold to their schedule a little tightly, um, as sort of like a design principle, ceding over some of that power, that autonomy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Well,
lovely
and she
story.
like she sat in a like she was a student in the class. So
Oh,
the
okay.
activities that we did, she was a student. If we assigned homework, she had to do it. I think we got to like make a quiz and like she had to take the quiz. It was
Okay.
very, yeah, like just like a fun like this space, like we're all part of a community, and that we can be creative in how we, participate and engage. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Shout out Miss Penny Alderman, did you say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yes. Man, she sounds amazing. The extra mile to take the test, to sit in the student desks, which we know are not as comfortable as the teacher hand me down rolly chairs, right? So that's awesome. So just there's a gift in reflecting on old teachers we've had. I don't have this plan, but I do want to talk a little bit. Have you taken anything from her style of teaching that you try to incorporate in your daily practice?
Yeah. So actually, when I taught AP Lang, um, I I did that with like the textbook for that class was like thematically divided. Like the chapters were different themes, and there were different um, types of texts that were all connected to that theme. And so instead of me um, going, through those themes or through those chapters, one year I did it Penny Alderman style, and I just let them in groups. They got a chapter, and they got to decide which chapter they felt most connected to or most excited that they really wanted to do a deep dive on, but I didn't tell them why. They just like ranked their chapters by interest, and then they were grouped. But see, they had to meet with me before, and they shared their little ideas for activities. And their like it had to connect to one of the AP essays that they were practicing. So whether it was like a rhetorical analysis or an argument or a synthesis, it was building towards kind of how the texts that were in that chapter connected to the writings that they would be doing at the end of the year. So, and it was chaotic, and it was one of those like I remember some groups went really well and I was really proud. And then other groups, you sit there as a teacher and you're like, I just stepped out in a no man's land, which I think in an AP class and like in those, you have a lot more autonomy to do that and to try like, these kind of crazy, really creative styles of teaching or lessons or
Hmm.
structures. And then if it fumbles, like those students are just kind of like they're there. Like if you've built that kind of, we're trying our best, and we're just trying to engage you in a different type of way. And so it wasn't perfect, and I didn't do it again the next year. I was like, I'm gonna try that out. And so yeah, so I love the idea of it, but just kind of that follow through element, especially when to give them time, it does take so much time because each group, having those days. So that's the hardest part of teaching. And it was just like, it's so sad at the end of the school year because there's so much more that I
Hmm.
wish that I could do with them. And I'm like, guys, if there's all these other books, like we could only get through so many of them. And it's like, I want them to just always, I want to meet new students every year. I don't wanna, like,
Hmm.
always have the same kids, but it's like, I just wish I had more time with them because I just feel like there's so many good things to share that there's just not enough time to get it all done.
So many books and only so little time, right?
I know, I know.
Well, kudos to you though for the willingness to try it and fail forward and realize that, I'm not going to do this again next year. But that's what learning is, right? To try something and experience something and adjust from that point. And I think when we're willing to do that, our kids can be willing to do that too. So speaking on that point and just willing to try something and teach in an innovative way, I'm really interested in hearing about maybe a project that you've done that you've considered innovative, and the process of building that project, what your successes were, what your challenges were. I know you've done a ton of amazing stuff with your students. Again, I feel like I just keep giving you props, but when I was an English teacher back in the day, we stole from you a community, a trial based on the Serial podcast. We did that. It was one of the highlights of my teaching life, bringing my kids actually into the Greenup County Courthouse and having them adjudicate a trial. Which, by the way, after that happened, so hopefully for listeners, if you've listened to the first season of the Serial podcast, it's about a man named Adnan Syed. He's found guilty of murder, and he goes away, but there's some problematic aspects to the case. At any rate, after we tried that trial with my students, they adjudicated him, they exonerated him, said, he's not guilty. And then his sentence was vacated the following year. So I had kids messaging me on Facebook because I wasn't teaching any longer. They're like, Mr. Collins, did you hear? I was like, yes, isn't that amazing? You found the answer before, the legal system did. So thank you for giving us that idea and for letting us sort of run with it. I really do appreciate that.
No, that was so fun. I mean, and those were some of the best moments too. We did, had the same experience, and students reaching out to me too, sending me the articles of this happened and the updates.
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, it's an incredible story, and the way that, even from the English teacher perspective, the way that that podcast is just told and designed and implemented. There's so much to talk about in terms of how to structure, a story, especially a complex one, that you're walking someone through the complexity, but you can't confuse them. You can only give them, this bit to understand this. And then
right.
So there's so much just brilliance out there. And then it was, back when podcasting first came out. So it was like I was introducing this whole new form to the students of you can access all of these podcasts for free. And yeah, it's great.
Yeah. It's a compelling story, but it's also a compelling craft as well. And I'll never forget being in the jury deliberation room, and one of my students passionately, he was like a new driver, so he had his keys in his hand, and he was pointing like, no, there's no way you're going to find him guilty. And then I also remember when the verdict was delivered, the spread of emotion was so interesting to me because, of course, there were applause. Many of our students, we had brought about 100 to the courtroom, were, yes, they're, cheering. And I remember specifically one girl, I don't remember who she was playing, but she was like Jay's girlfriend at some point. She said, you gotta be kidding me. And her voice cut through everyone else's applause. And it was just such a funny juxtaposition. So, oh gosh, got me reminiscing on teaching that I've lost the thread a little bit. Back to the question. I was asking you about an innovative project that you've put together, what the successes and challenges have been. I know you've done a lot of work in the Kentucky Innovative Teacher Fellowship. You've been a Kentucky Writing Project teacher consultant. You've been a teacher leader for the Morehead Writing Project. You've done a lot of amazing stuff. So tell us a story about one of these projects with your students and how that went, what your design considerations were, and what some insights might be for other teachers.
I know, it's so hard. And because so do you think it would be better to talk about what I'm sharing at Momentum with the Root Deep Grow Tall and what my ITF project was, or do you think it would be better to talk about the TED Talk, cross-curricular PBL that we do? I just want it to be, because I do feel like the Root Deep Grow Tall does translate maybe to multiple grade levels and subject areas better. I'm just not sure who your intended audience is who would take away the most from these.
Yeah. So the idea of this podcast is a story that can ideally help other teachers of here are design considerations you might implement into your classroom. That said, I think there's something really rich and place-based about Root Deep, Grow Tall. Obviously, the name kind of alludes to that. I think there's some really rich storytelling around your papaw being a historian and that being part of it. I think that's really neat. But if you think there's more to be gleaned from the TED Talk, you can do that. And honestly, we can do both. It's up to you.
Okay. Maybe I'll do like a shorter version of both just because it's kind of like they're both good in different ways. And I just want whoever's listening to this to feel like they walked away with something that they might even just mention to a colleague, like, could we
Yeah,
try this? Or, because I've just had such incredible moments with my students that I would love for that to kind of spread and make its way in other places. So
for sure.
with Root Deep Grow Tall, that was a or a Morehead writing project grant a couple years ago. And it was all about project-based writing. And so we went to the Hyman Settlement School and we got to spend some time there just really dreaming up projects. And they brought in the Narrative 4 team, and we were it was just such an incredible experience. And then we had time, which was so wonderful to really just reflect and think of kind of big pieces of ourselves that we wanted to bring into our classroom and connect with our students in those like meaningful, like authentic ways. Like it's so purposeful when it matters to you as a teacher. Like it just makes it so easy to share that with students, and it's contagious. It has been, at least for me.
Yeah.
And that's because I'm from Morehead. I teach at the high school I graduated from, and one of those proud Eastern Kentucky. I love where I live. I love raising my family here. And so, as you mentioned, my papa was the director of libraries at MSU and a Methodist pastor at like little country churches in counties around.
Yeah.
And so because he was a librarian, he was very organized, and we love that, and very into like, archiving and keeping things. And then because I think too, because he was, a part of such kind of small isolated-ish communities and the pastor of those little churches, like even like when people would pass away and they weren't sure what to do with like their family photo album or like old newspaper clippings and like these things, like he just kind of he just had this like own little archive of like all of this crazy, incredible, like local history kind of thing. And it
Yeah.
was formed as file cabinets at Granny and Papa's house. And they were, meticulously organized and alphabetized. And every picture had an explanation on the back of who it was and where they were. And so he ended up writing a weekly newspaper article when he retired that was Morehead Memories, and it was the people and places of our community, and it would just talk about Main Street over the years, and he would have pictures and all of this. And then that led to working with the Jesse Stewart Foundation. He published some books about Morehead and Round County and Kentucky history. And so that was kind of while I was growing up. He was retired and doing those things. And so so when he passed away, it was kind of like there were these file cabinets. And, I'm just the sentimental. I don't know. I was just like, well, I don't know where these go, but they can't.
It says everyone else is still being recorded. Ask Lindsay to refresh, then rejoin from a regular browser, not incognito. Maybe if you just refresh, it'll bring you back in. No worries, it happens. So we were talking about how sentimental you are, and you had those filing cabinets.
Yes. And my family knows, I'm the teacher. Um, so that was something that I was able to keep. This is an incredible gift. And before he passed away, he worked with our Round County Public Library, and they digitize all of it. So it's like on jump drives
It's
that like
awesome.
you could check out from the local library. So we knew it was going to like be exist in other forms. Anyways, I ended up with it. And so whenever I was at Hyman Settlement School, that's just what I was thinking about. I was like Morehead and Round County is just, I grew up hearing him talking about, Cave Run Lake being built. And I'm like, my students probably think that that was just a lake that's always been there. They don't know the history of the impact that that has had on this whole region
Right.
and why it was designed and how people reacted. Like, our family farm was one of the farms that was purchased to be put underwater. It's
Mm.
so there's just so much like local like history and stories that I just feel like maybe our students don't know. And then even if like their Morehead or Round County is just a small part of their story, it's still part of them. So even if they just go to high school here or they're, because our kids move around a lot. So they're not like me where it's multi-generational here, but it's still
Hmm.
like, I just feel like you feel connected to a place whenever you kind of know a little bit more of not just like the facts of it, but like, the history. So anyways, I talked to my family about making Papaw's files like accessible to my students. And so we, bring them in and students get to put on little white gloves and, these old photographs of this area and they're, still organized the way that he organized them all. So there's, files on Boy Scouts and just different things that like horse shows. And so like we have, students who are interested in that. And so they're looking through like how the MSU farm was, made. Anyways, it just is such a fun but meaningful and just like I feel the connection forming between my students and me because I tell them this is like my papaw's, he's very passionate about this and this means so much to me. And they are
Hmm.
so like respectful and delicate with those artifacts, and just wonderful with them. But then I feel connections forming because kids are interested in the same things. So they're wanting to go through those files together.
Yeah,
Um, and so, just these connections forming. And so I think every little community in every town or even big city like has those archives probably maybe through the public library or through, I know we had one of my former students was a fellow for the Berea Archive, and she came
okay.
in and was a guest speaker. So even universities have archives for like different places. So as teachers, you could reach out and see if you could, let your students kind of delve into authentic research on local history or um, how their neighborhood came about or how
Hmm.
whatever, and just learning about themselves but also their communities and just feeling like they're part of it. So that's the rooting deep part of that unit,
For
and
sure.
they get to do research, and some students are inspired to do more research and to do presentations or share what they've learned through that process. But then the unit also has the growing tall aspect,
Hmm.
um, which is all about not just their future but our community's future. So there's a part of it that's about their future, like where they want to go. What does home look like for you in the future? And they can, I mean, that we have so much fun, like with their vision boards, and they get on Zillow and they're looking at how expensive it would be to live in, Portland, and, and then they look at the occupational outlook handbook of their career and what's the average salary and
Hmm.
just like dream of what their life might become. But then, so that's, their future, but then our community's future, they get to meet with community leaders and talk about ways that they hope to see Morehead Round County grow or change or incorporate, different things to make it better. So just engaging them in research, in the community, and then also dreaming of a future for themselves. I get to know them so well because
Yeah.
I know what they love and their papaw stories or it's really, really neat. So I think that might be something, different subject areas could do or
Hmm.
different,
I
and then oh, sorry.
I was just going to comment. So, what I'm hearing in that project, and I was lucky enough to actually go to Morehead State University and watch that happen. First off, there's something really tactile about, putting on the gloves, sorting through the archives, which English teachers don't often make available to students, right? I'm guilty of that. A lot of times our classes feel like, typing now, right? Like type a document on a Chromebook. So there's something tactile about that. There's some real power in the community building, not only between you and your students, but from student to student, and then especially between students and community members. I think the more that we can connect students to community, the better off we are. And I think the heart of that is that students deserve an authorship over where they live, even if it's just for a small time, as you mentioned. Our kids can feel disenfranchised sometimes, or they can't locate themselves where they live. It all feels like history, right? And I think there's something really powerful about saying, no, you create what your future looks like, and it can be here, and it's based on these factors. So again, I think it is really neat, and I hope that other teachers take that as inspiration to dig into the place where you're at and give students time to grapple with that history, and then also make your own history as branches coming off of that. So yeah, thank you for sharing. You had another piece as well.
Yes, yes. So our a couple of years ago, we started a cross-curricular kind of PBL for all of our freshmen. So at all levels, we work in their English and social studies classes to go through a process of them. The guiding question for the unit is, how can I use my voice today to bring about change for tomorrow? So we watch a lot of TED Talks, and we read and watch Silas House's poem that he did at Governor Bashir, the most recent inauguration. I just blanked on what it's called. Of course I did. Hold on. Those Who Carry Us. There we go. There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I was like, I have to say, okay. And it's just such a beautiful poem. And so that's how we kickstart this idea of um, kind of everyone has a voice, everyone has um, things that they're passionate about, and let's use our voice to elevate other people, because that's what Silas House says in that poem. And so it's they get to choose their topic, and they do that in their social studies classes. They do a lot of research on different movements or leaders or different even just problems, and that might inspire them. But they're allowed to pick anything that they want, whether it's Rowan County Senior High School specific, or zoom all the way out to like global problems. And they get to do research, and then in English class we're teaching them how to use things that they find in their research and integrate that in their own presentation, and then how to cite their sources. And then they do presentations that are TED Talk like,
Hmm.
and every student gives one in their social studies classes, how we did it this year. And then the ones that are the top performing at all levels are invited to participate in the student showcase that we do, both during the day and after school. And we, put them on stage. We give them the little mic that goes, and they have their little slideshow with their sources, and it just they have people who show up to hear their thoughts and hear why they think what they think. And I always leave so encouraged, because it's a hard time sometimes when you just watch the news or you just see that's the best thing about teaching, is I always feel so hopeful when I think of my students, because
Hmm.
I know that they are incredible human beings with, I mean, just brilliant ideas and all of this passion. And I want to embolden them to make it like just better. And wherever they go and whatever they do, to use their voice, their talents, their intelligence to just help. And so it just is an opportunity for them to do that, and then to celebrate their classmates. who do that, and we have them present, like, it is, when you look at the program and it has, like, the titles, we are talking about everything under the sun. And it's just like rapid fire because we try not to make it last so long,
Right.
and so we go from talking about healthcare to talking about band to talking, you're just, because they have just varied interests. And so that's another thing I think could be translated and maybe helpful, is seeing it through to more than just like, okay, write an essay,
Hmm.
or okay, yeah, we've got to teach a standard on research the topic I'm giving you,
Yeah.
right? It's like there's opportunities there to open it up, and to leave it more as a no, you decide. And then there's an element of, okay, instead of just turning this into me or just doing a peer review and then turning it into Miss Johnson, like, who else needs to hear this message and how do we make that happen?
Yeah. So in hearing this, I'm curious, what's the collaboration look like between the cross-curricular teachers? And also, what are some of the challenges that you face in bringing something like that to fruition?
Yeah, so the first year that we did it, we had some guidance and support from an instructional coach, and and it went really well. And then we had a lot of teacher turnover, which I'm sure a lot of districts are experiencing. And so it's kind of like we have, a lot of new people, and we have new curriculum being adopted, and it was just kind of like, is there space for this? Are we doing this again? And we ultimately, what happened, I am just going to say, what happened was I was not planning on doing it, even though we did it that one time and it was magical. I'm just going to be completely honest, and sometimes you're just like, that was the year that happened, and that was wonderful. And now that all of those other teachers, or that, those helpers were gone, it's like, we can't do that again. How do we make that happen without
Right.
those people? It felt connected to the people who were in the room when it happened. And so we didn't talk about it. And then one of our new social studies teachers just popped in my room after school so casually and was like, "Hey," and he was so kind about how he was just like, "Hey, someone was talking about this and it sounds really, I would love to do that." And it's like, that was that was all it took for me to just be like, "Okay, I'm the only one who did this last year, but we're gonna do it again, let's
Yeah.
bring it back." And so we started meeting weekly after school, just the teachers, the English and social studies teachers, just for like 30 minutes of like,
Mm,
here's how we did this last year. Here's how we're gonna make adjustments for this year. What do you think? And it was just this truly like teacher-led collaborative like moment. And then yeah, and we made it happen. And so that was 6 months ago. I probably would have said that was a really cool thing we did that one time. And
yeah.
now it's part of, like, I think we're going to just every year, like, this is going to be part of the freshman experience at Round County.
That's amazing. J- there's so much to be said for having similarly passionate teachers around you that sometimes it is easy to say, oh, goodness, like that was a lot of work. I mean, it was great. It was a lot of work, and I'm not sure I can do it this year. But when you have that team of folks who are like, no, I think we can actually if we jump in together. That's such an amazing story, and people need to hear that, right? Like, I can think of how many times I've been able to go like, I probably wouldn't do this were it not for the supportive team I have around me, right? My goodness, it's so lovely to hear that it's becoming like a foundational piece of, our RCHS's, like experience. So kudos to you, and to your team, whoever that young social studies teacher is. That's awesome. Well, Lindsay, I think I've kept you long enough, given that it is your closing day, and here you are with me, and it is almost 5 p.m. Eastern. This has been absolutely lovely. We've loved hearing your stories, and I think there's so much insight that hopefully we can take away. I appreciate you. You're a fantastic human being, and I hope you have a lovely day.
All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Bye bye. There you have it, folks. That was my conversation with the incredible Lindsay Johnson from Morehead, Kentucky, an English teacher at Rowan County Senior High School, and many, many more things besides. The thing that really sticks with me about the conversation with Lindsay is how we can give students power over place, and how the place where they are from, even if it's just in high school, can really shape you. And what matters is, as a student, as a human being, is leaning into that space, learning about that space, and more importantly, learning how you can take ownership and authorship and agency in your community. I leave this conversation knowing that Lindsay's students are well taken care of, and also that, at least in her classroom, they've had a nugget of the belief that they can impact change in the world. And I think the work that we do with students is about empowering them to understand that they are agents in this world and society and community of ours. And it's our job to give them the tools and the facilitation to see that in themselves and then to make it happen. Thank you again so much for listening to episode 3 of the ELA Education Podcast. I hope you'll listen to the rest of the season. We've got several more episodes coming up, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.